Blog Talk Radio.
Let's just take a moment here to welcome everyone into this episode of Viatorian Voices, Conversations on the Way. Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Mitchell, and in this podcast series, we like to take a look at the Viatorian community, the mission and charism that the community puts forth in the world, and get a better understanding of the Viatorians, the work they do, and how we can all be a part of that community and being involved in the call that God puts out for everyone through different means and different places. And we're going to learn a lot about that in our conversations. Now, joining me today is Dan Masterton. Dan is the Assistant Vocation Minister for the Viatorians. He's been instrumental in helping get this podcast series started, and we've got a great conversation lined up today about building relationships within the community. So first of all, Dan, thanks very much for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to be with you.
We got some things to learn as we get the conversations going here, and kind of explain for me, first of all, your role within the Viatorian community as Assistant Vocation Minister. What does that mean?
Sure. So Brother John Eustace is appointed by the Provincial Council to be the Director of Vocation Ministry, which means all of the work that people are doing in all of our parishes, schools, and across the Viatorian world, try to help people understand what God has invited them to do in their lives. It's directed by John, but I help John with some of the communications, like emails, social media, podcasts, young adult ministry, all the things we're doing to try to establish and sustain that presence well and be of good service to the men and women in our communities.
And it's interesting you mentioned there schools and parishes and the different places globally that the Viatorians are involved in communities. Can you just give us an overview of the Viatorians, their mission, and an understanding of what they seek to do in the world for us?
Sure. So Viatorians are professed religious brothers and priests together with lay associates, men and women who commit to share in the charism, mission, and community life of the Viatorians. And Viatorians are invited by God to proclaim Jesus Christ and his gospel and to raise communities where faith is lived, deepened, and celebrated. So that usually expresses itself through our leadership and ministry in schools, in parishes, and then in other communities and organizations, institutions where we're primarily serving young people or walking with those whose society accounts of little importance, such as immigrants and people who are seeking legal relief with their immigration status in the United States.
And in a number of conversations that we have had or will be having in this podcast series, we're going to learn a lot about some of those different ministries and some of the people doing that work, and it's quite interesting. Tell me about your experience in terms of how you first discovered the Viatorian community.
Yeah, so I grew up in Arlington Heights, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, just northwest of the city. And coincidentally, that's where the Viatorians in the United States are headquartered. So my older brother went to St. Viator High School. He started there when I was in 5th grade. And during junior high, I wasn't sure. Maybe I'd go to public school. Maybe I'd go to private school. But as my brother went through high school, my parents really became huge supporters and proponents of St. Viator High School and of the Viatorians, both the priests and brothers and the cares and the mission. And so by the time I got to 8th grade and I had done well on the entrance exam and gotten a small scholarship, everything had kind of come together that I was going to go to St. Viator High School as well. So I started there in 2003. My younger brother followed me in 2004. And now the three of us have all graduated from there. We all went on to Catholic universities. And actually, we have all served the church in different ways in our professional lives as well. But the really important thing for us is that we've all stayed in touch and become personal friends with some of the Viatorians. Brother John and I have been friends since I was in high school. Father Corey baptized my daughter and will baptize my niece in a few weeks. So the connection has stayed really strong, and that's what means a lot to us.
I imagine as you come in as a freshman in high school and are exposed to the teachings and some of the things that go on and the experiences you have, then as you say, go off to a Catholic university and then become a professional and start your career. You've got a family. Relationships change and evolve. It seems like you have allowed that Viatorian presence to remain threaded throughout your life. Tell me about the kind of the way that contact with the Viatorians and your involvement has evolved over the years.
Yeah, it's cool because when you're in high school, you have your teachers or campus ministers who are involved with you as a student, but then there's something special that happens when you stay in touch afterwards, and it's no longer part of your student life, but it's part of your personal life. So going away to college, I remember going to study abroad in London and still being in touch with Father Corey Brost, who had invited me to a summer conference the year before. He knew I was studying abroad, and he had decided to take a trip himself. And so we actually met up in London at a pub and had a drink and a meal together when I was a college student. When I moved back to the States and was living in California, I had stayed in touch with Brother John, and he was out for a trip with friends and had gone on a hike, and I met up with him halfway between where he was staying and where I was living, and we got a nice lunch together. And it's kind of just continued in that way. Viatorians just care a lot about keeping in touch personally, and it's rarely transactional, but it's always very personal and friendly and authentic.
Now, you mentioned priests and brothers and referred to several in the conversation thus far, but you are a lay person with a young family. One of the things about the Viatorian experience is how it has a place for lay associates and just individuals who want to be involved. Can you talk about someone who might want to be active, to be involved without committing to a formal religious life?
Yeah, of course. For me, it's now taken expression in being a part-time member of the staff at the Province Center, but even shy of that, we have a young adult ministry now through Vocation ministry where we're trying to engage both college-aged and post-grad young adults in more thoughtful discernment about their college major or their post-grad career or job changes or moving. Today prayer is always happening at the Province Center and is open and welcoming to anyone who desires that sort of prayer experience, which we've kept going through live streaming online during the pandemic. And then even, someone who's more serious could discern into association and enter a pre-commitment process to decide if they want to commit to that.
Well, let's talk about this at a couple of different levels as we continue our conversation on Viatorian Voices, Conversations on the Way, today featuring Dan Masterton, the Assistant Vocation Minister of the Viatorians. And each of us at different stages may have different ability to make commitments and be involved. Let's just talk in general about faith and understanding kind of a religious experience in your life. Adult faith formation is something that the Viatorians have focused on through the schools and elsewhere. What does that mean in terms of someone who may have an interest? When you talk about adult faith formation, is that just a kind of a study? Is it involvement? What might be included in that?
Well, the nice thing is in kind of modern social media era, there's a lot of ways that you can do it on your own, in your own kind of free time or when you choose, whether it's through following our social media at Viatorian USA, visiting Viatorians.com to keep up with news stories or to watch some of the information videos we have on the vocation pages where some of our guys are talking about our charism and mission and their discernment of God's invitation for them. But it can also, in your adult life, can mean that you're volunteering with Viter House, helping with tutoring or driving or things around the house. It might mean that you volunteer in one of the Viatorian parishes with one of the ministries there. And maybe that leads to plugging into something that is a little more substantial in terms of learning more about your faith, not just from the ministry and service, but from joining in something that is more of a formation type thing, whether it's a Bible study, a young adult program gathering, offering, or any other number of things across our institutions.
And perhaps at the further end of that spectrum, still not committing to a form of religious life, but the Viatorians offer a role as an associate in the community, which is very, very unique, it seems to me, and there seems to be a growing number of those associated with the high school locally that I know. When you talk about that particular path, becoming an associate? What does that lead to, and what is involved in that?
Well, sometimes you hear the Viatorians called the clerics of St. Viator, which technically refers to the brothers and priests, but we've taken more to calling it the Viatorian community or just the Viatorians, which is an inclusive term to include those associates who are laymen and women, single or married, who decide they want to share in the charism and community life. So that takes a lot of expressions. One of them is some associates are called to leadership, and the Viatorian Community Council is a body that meets to discuss the business of the community and to provide advice to the provincial council. And that includes and is led by associates, including lay women. The other thing about associates is they may be staff members, full-time or part-time, at Viatorian schools or parishes or institutions, but they also may just lead professional lives that aren't necessarily within the church, but reflect their desire to be more fully involved with the Viatorians, even beyond their career. So it's neat to see the diversity of backgrounds and the different ways people engage as associates.
And if someone chooses that associate path, can you give a quick recap as to what that might entail in terms of time and study?
Yeah, associates are asked to get in contact with the community. The council has a professed man who is in charge of coordinating the associates, and you'll enter into a discernment program where for a few years you'll do some reading, you'll have some discussions, and you'll stay in touch with the association coordinator. And over that time, decide if you're prepared to make a commitment. And if you think you are and the community agrees, you'll eventually have a commitment ceremony where you'll make a short-term commitment that you can renew. And down the line, you may decide that you want to make a definitive commitment and remain an associate for the longer term. So it creates a nice path for people who want to more intentionally incorporate that into their faith lives.
We've got just a minute or so left here, Dan, but if you could sort of just, give us something tangible. Someone, a lay person, wants to be involved in the charism and the mission of the Viatorians. What types of things might they be able to do to contribute to the ongoing efforts of the community? Yeah,
as far as young adults, we would love for you to be into the young adult ministry. If you visit Viatorians.com, there's a Vocation ministry page about it. You can see some more about what we're doing and how to sign up to receive our alerts. We're largely thinking of college-aged, post-grad, and even into 20s and 30s young adults who want to be involved in discernment gatherings, recreation and social nights and other things. And then for the rest, even for older folks, whether you can consider Viatorian schools for your children, whether you could consider belonging to a Viatorian parish, if you can support or engage in the ministries of places like Viator House that are doing something a little bit wider and a little less geographically anchored, we would just love for people who are passionate about our mission to lend a hand.
And just give us one more time the web address or email address where people can find out more, and let's send them in the right direction here.
Of course. So Viatorians.com is our website. Our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram social media are all at Viatorian USA. And if you'd like to email vocations@Viatorian.com, Viatorians.com is where you can reach us, and we can refer you wherever you need to go from there.
Oh, excellent. A great conversation with Dan Masterton today, the Assistant Vocation Minister for the Viatorian community. And the community itself proclaims Jesus Christ and his gospel and raises communities where faith is lived, deepened, and celebrated. Founded by Venerable Louis Curbs, Viatorians are professed brothers and priests and, as you've heard, lay associates who, by motto, strive to do everything well so that through us Jesus may be adored and loved. And this includes St. Viator High School that Dan mentioned here in Arlington Heights, Illinois, a Catholic college preparatory community of learning that provides religious formation and academic excellence for young men and women. Deeply rooted in the Catholic identity and guided by the Viatorian mission, all members of the high school discern who God wants them to be, discover what the world needs, and transform the communities they encounter. It's recognized as an exceptional institution where tradition and innovation meet, and we'd like to share more information about the school at stviator.com or follow at stviatorhs on social media. This podcast will come to you on a regular basis as a production of Viatorian Vocation Ministry. And as you heard, you can be a follower on social media at Viatorian USA or email us at vocations@viatorians.com. on behalf of the Viatorian community, this is Jim Mitchell, and until we get together again, as we always say, Saint Viator, pray for us, adored and loved be Jesus. Thanks for listening.